When he opened his eyes, the alien Huntress was lying on his chest, smiling softly. The air tasted like metal and ash as Arjun Callus crouched behind the twisted wreckage of what had once been a Terran transport. 3 days of running and the Nexian hunters still hadn't given up. His hand pressed against the wound in his side, blood seeping through his fingers despite the emergency sealant he'd applied hours ago. "Rook to Shadow 6, he whispered into his comm unit. "Position compromised. Requesting extraction," Static answered him. The atmospheric interference from the morning's ion storm had only worsened. He was on his own. A flash of movement caught his eye, a shimmer of purple skin and flowing golden hair among the red rocks. The infamous Valora Zix, the most feared huntress in the Nexian Empire's elite Voidstalker unit. Stories of her ruthless efficiency had spread through resistance ranks like wildfire. 50 confirmed kills, never failed a hunt. And now she had found him. Arjun's vision blurred as he raised his pulse rifle. Too slow. A searing pain erupted through his shoulder as her energy bolt found its mark. He fired back wildly, satisfaction flickering through his fading consciousness as Valora ducked behind cover. Is this how it ends? He thought bitterly, fumbling for his last stimulant injector. His fingers felt thick, uncooperative as the battle stims already in his system began to fade. Through the smoke, he glimpsed Valora advancing, her movements liquid and precise. Her violet skin caught the light of the twin suns, almost luminescent against her sleek black armor. The golden waves of her hair were partially restrained in elaborate warrior braids that marked her high rank. Their eyes met across the battlefield, her golden irises narrowing as she assessed him. There was something in that gaze beyond the cold calculation of a predator. Was it curiosity, respect? Arjun felt his legs give out as the blood loss finally overcame the stims. As he collapsed, he thought he saw her expression shift. The last thing he registered before darkness claimed him was Valora sprinting toward him, not with her weapon raised but with her hands outstretched, as though to catch him. Not like this, he thought as consciousness slipped away, not by her hand. In the darkness that followed, he dreamed of golden eyes and gentle hands, of whispered words in a language he couldn't understand but somehow felt like home. Consciousness returned to Arjun in stages. First came the awareness of pain, duller now, managed, then the distant sound of water dripping somewhere. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself staring at a low stone ceiling illuminated by the soft blue glow of a portable light unit. What truly shocked him, however, was the weight on his chest. Valora Zix, the purple-skinned terror of the Nexian Empire, was lying with her head resting against his bandaged torso. Her golden hair spilled across his chest like liquid sunlight, and her eyes, previously so cold and calculating, were watching him with an expression he never expected to see. Relief. "You're awake," she said, her voice lacking its usual edge of command. I was beginning to worry the antitoxin hadn't worked. Arjun tried to sit up but winced as pain shot through his side. Valora's hand gently pressed him back down. "Don't move. The nanites are still repairing your internal damage." "Why?" It was all he could manage to say, his throat dry and voice hoarse. Valora shifted, sitting up but remaining close. In the blue light he could see the elegant contours of her face, the almost luminescent quality of her violet skin. A small cut marked her cheekbone, evidence that his wild shots had not all missed. "Your question has many answers," she said quietly. "Why did I save you?
Why am I here?
Why did I disobey orders to eliminate all resistance fighters?" She looked away, her golden eyes reflecting the light. "I'm not entirely sure I understand it myself." She reached for a water container and helped him drink. Her movements were careful, precise, but there was a gentleness to them that contradicted everything he'd heard about the ruthless Huntress. "We're in a cave system outside the combat zone," she explained. "My tracker shows no Imperial patrols nearby. We should be safe for now." Arjun studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "You're risking treason," he noted, his voice stronger now. Valora's lips curved into a soft smile that transformed her face entirely. "Perhaps I've grown tired of being the perfect Imperial weapon." Her fingers lingered on his wrist, checking his pulse. "Rest. When you're stronger, we can discuss what comes next." As Arjun drifted back to sleep, he felt her settle beside him again, her warmth a stark contrast to the cold stone beneath them, her presence a paradox he couldn't begin to unravel. 3 days had passed in their underground sanctuary. Arjun's strength was returning, though not as quickly as his curiosity about the woman who had saved him. Valora sat at the mouth of their small cave, the dying light of day catching in her golden hair as she kept watch. Her profile against the sunset revealed the elegant ridge that traced her brow and the slight points of her ears, subtle reminders of her alien heritage. "Why did you join the Void Stalkers?" Arjun asked, carefully making his way to sit beside her. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was soft with memory. "I was selected at age 7. On Nexus, it's considered the highest honor. My family celebrated for days." She turned to face him. "We aren't told about the realities of expansion, only the glory of the Empire. And now? Now I've seen 16 worlds fall. I've watched civilizations burn and called it victory." Her golden eyes met his. It became hollow. The confession hung between them, dangerous and intimate. "What about you, Arjun Callus? The intelligence files say you were a xenobotanist before the invasion." He raised an eyebrow. "You researched me?" "I research all my targets," she replied, then added more softly, "though you've become something quite different from a target." A comfortable silence settled between them as the last light faded. In the darkness, Valora activated a small heating unit that cast her purple skin in a warm glow. "I studied plants because they adapt," Arjun finally said. "They find ways to thrive in impossible conditions. I thought humans could learn from them." He smiled ruefully. "I suppose we have. Here we are, still fighting despite everything." Valora's hand found his in the dark, her touch tentative. "Your wounds are healing well. Thanks to you." She shifted closer, the scent of her, something like cinnamon and ozone, enveloping him. "The nanites did most of the work." "Not what I meant." Their eyes locked, and Arjun felt something electric pass between them. Without thinking, he reached out, his fingers tracing the luminescent markings along her forearm. Valora's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. "These are beautiful," he murmured. "They tell my lineage and achievements," she explained, voice barely above a whisper. "This one means seeker of truth." "Is that what you're seeking now?" Instead of answering, she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. An intimate gesture among her people, though Arjun couldn't know that. All he knew was that something profound had shifted between them, something neither had expected but both now embraced with quiet wonder. The distant hum of Imperial hover transports shattered their fragile peace. Valora was on her feet instantly, her warrior instincts taking over as she extinguished their light and gathered essential supplies. "They shouldn't be this far south," she whispered, tension evident in her voice. "Someone must have tracked my ship's energy signature." Arjun pulled himself up, wincing slightly but determined. "How many?" "At least a squadron, maybe more." Valora's golden eyes flashed in the darkness. "We need to move deeper into the cave system." They navigated through narrow passages, Valora leading with sure-footed grace while Arjun followed, his hand occasionally brushing against the small of her back. Each touch, however practical, sent sparks of awareness through both of them. When they finally reached a secluded chamber with a small underground spring, Valora paused, her body suddenly rigid with conflict. "They're my people, Arjun," she said quietly, her back still to him. "Everything I've ever known." "If I truly abandoned them?" He stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. "I understand loyalty, Valora. I won't ask you to betray everything you are." She turned to him then, her purple features softened in the faint bioluminescent glow of the cave fungi. "But that's just it. I'm not sure what I am anymore." Her voice dropped lower. "Not since you." The confession hung between them, fragile and monumental. Arjun reached out, his fingers gently tucking a strand of golden hair behind her pointed ear. The tenderness of the gesture broke something open inside her. Valora closed the distance between them, her hands finding his face as she pressed her forehead against his in the traditional Nexian gesture of deep trust. "If they find us," she began. "They won't," he assured her, his hand settling at her waist. "Not tonight." In the darkness of their hidden sanctuary, surrounded by the distant sounds of those hunting them, they found solace in whispered confessions and hesitant touches. Valora's fingers traced the contours of his face as if memorizing him by touch, while Arjun marveled at how the luminescent patterns on her skin brightened at his gentle caresses. "If we survive this," he murmured against her temple. "What then?" Instead of answering, Valora's lips found his, tentative at first. Then with growing certainty, a wordless promise of possibilities neither had dared imagine before. Above them, the sounds of the search party grew fainter, moving away, but both knew the reprieve was temporary. By morning, Valora would have to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. Dawn broke with decision. Valora stood at the cave entrance, her silhouette outlined by the rising sun as she scanned the horizon with practiced precision. "The main Imperial force has moved west," she reported, turning back to Arjun. "But they've left sentries." "We won't get far on foot," Arjun watched her, noting the subtle shift in her stance. The way she held herself not as an Imperial Huntress anymore, but as something new, something of her own making. "You have a plan," he stated, recognizing the determined set of her jaw. A smile touched her lips, transforming her features. "My scout ship is hidden 2 kilometers north. It's small but fast enough to get us through the blockade if we time it right." "Us?" The word hung in the air, weighted with possibility. Valora crossed to him, her movements fluid and graceful. She took his hands in hers, her purple fingers intertwining with his. "I can't return to the Empire, Arjun, not now." Her golden eyes held his, unflinching and certain. "What I've been taught, what I've believed, it doesn't align with what I've seen. What I feel." The last words were barely a whisper, but they resonated in the small space between them like a thunderclap. Arjun pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers in the gesture she had taught him. "The resistance would benefit from someone with your knowledge. Is that the only reason you want me to come with you?" Her question was teasing, but vulnerability flickered beneath. His answer was to close the final distance between them, his lips capturing hers with newfound confidence. Valora responded instantly, her arms winding around his neck as she pressed herself against him, all her carefully constructed barriers finally falling away. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Arjun smiled. "Does that answer your question?" Their journey to her ship was tense but successful, Valora's intimate knowledge of Imperial patrol patterns guiding them safely through. As they prepared for launch, she paused at the controls, momentarily overwhelmed by the enormity of her choice. Arjun's hand settled on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "Second thoughts?" She covered his hand with hers, the luminescent patterns on her skin glowing brighter at his touch. "No, new beginnings." The ship rose silently into the atmosphere, leaving behind the battlefield where they had been enemies. As they broke through the clouds heading toward the hidden resistance base where Arjun's people waited, Valora looked to the stars spreading before them, countless possibilities, just like the ones that had opened in her heart. "When I opened my eyes and saw you watching over me," Arjun said quietly, "I never imagined where it would lead." Valora smiled, the expression now coming naturally to her once severe features. "Perhaps the best journeys are the ones we never planned." As their small ship disappeared into the vast expanse of space, they left behind their predetermined roles as hunter and prey, enemies by circumstance. What lay ahead was uncertain, but they would face it as they had found each other, unexpectedly but perfectly.